Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's so disheartening when you see all the work and all the effort.
First Nations in the Fraser Valley say waste spills are hurting local salmon and are calling for more enforcement. Plus,
behind the front, PC, behind the front!
SPS! SPS!
We always line up in twos because in policing you always have a partner.
we take you inside one of the largest police changes in Canadian history.
I don't want you to quit. Will you come with me? Just come off the bridge.
An exclusive look at the Surrey Police Service as it takes over from the RCMP. And
this is something that is, I would say, kind of frivolous, kind of playful.
why are some orcas wearing dead salmon on their heads? More on the apex predator's unique behavior.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Two First Nations in the Fraser Valley say waste spills are harming salmon in a nearby slough. It's happening 3 times in the past 3 months. And as Chad Pawson shows us, they're pushing for answers and accountability.
Cloudy, stinky water, white discharge, and foam. Members of the Chiam and Squaw First Nations near Chilliwack say toxic waste is harming salmon in the Hope Slough, a waterway the nations have spent millions of dollars restoring.
It's so disheartening when you see all the work and all the effort.
We knew there were several ongoing long-term issues on the Hope Slough. We started researching the water quality and taking samples and sending out biologists that we discovered just how widespread the issue is.
In late September, a discharge of waste killed thousands of fish. More waste flowing into the slough was reported November 23rd, and then yet more a week later. While there haven't been more fish fatalities, the nations say they're on high alert.
Together with regulations, there must be monitoring and there must be enforcement to ensure that that there's no more of this pollution going into the fresh waterway here.
A provincial investigation has yet to pinpoint the source of the September spill, saying multiple factors may have contributed to the fish kill, including low oxygen levels in the water. The province says it's still trying to figure out what caused that. The First Nations suspect industrial agriculture in the area and want to work with farmers to help keep the slough pollution-free.
We have had really good collaboration with several farmers in the area for the work that we're doing. Our hope is to expand those relationships, to be able to support farmers as they look at their farming practices, recognize there's certain pieces that have to change.
Water in the slough appears to be improving for now. Multiple levels of government say they're working together to figure out what's going on. The nations have hired a conservation foundation to further investigate as well. They hope to have results of water samples in 3 weeks. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
MPs have finally had the chance to grill the head of Rogers Communications over customer complaints of sneaky price hikes. This all began with a CBC Go Public investigation into costs that were rising for TV customers, even though they were locked into a contract. Our Erica Johnson broke that story and picks it up here.
Rogers CEO Tony Staffieri appeared by video conference, which didn't go over well.
I would have expected after all of this, I would have seen you here in person today.
Staffieri skipped his last scheduled appearance at the Standing Committee on Industry and Technology by sending a subordinate. Infuriated MPs then ordered a summons to make him appear. Their concern, a growing chorus of Rogers customers frustrated by contracts they say are unfair and misleading.
Is it just basically that you just assume that your customers are stupid?
How many other buried costs do you have in the contract that you can jack up and rip Canadians off on?
For 2 months, Go Public has been hearing from people like Lori Michelsia. She signed a 2-year deal for TV, internet, and home phone in August, believing it'd be $199 a month. Shortly after, her monthly bill shot up $21. A clause in Bell, Rogers, and TELUS contracts allows fees to increase while customers are locked in.
It's disgusting. When you enter into a contract, that is a detailed agreement between 2 or more parties that you expect is going to be what you agreed to.
Michelsia figures over a year her bills will be about $250 more than what she expected.
It's just plain ethically wrong.
In the hot seat, Staffieri repeatedly defended his company's contracts.
Our term commitments are on base TV services, and we make it clear there are other items that are add-ons.
But the MPs weren't buying it, one citing the case of Kathy Cooper, whose story first told on The National kicked off a flood of other complaints.
If I reviewed that contract myself, do you think it's reasonable for me to say that it's a plain language contract?
I think you would find it straightforward.
In the end, several MPs said they felt Staffieri's testimony was similar to what Rogers customers experience, short on details.
The committee is expected to pass a motion to call out the communications giant in the House of Commons for not proactively disclosing price increases. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Surrey Police Service has officially taken over jurisdiction from the RCMP. It was a bumpy and expensive road for the municipal police force that spanned years and made its way through the courts. Over the last few months, the SPS gave CBC News exclusive access to officers, new recruits, and its chief. Our video journalist John Hernandez and photographer Ben Nelm spent months behind the scenes as the budding police agency prepared for its monumental transition.
Yeah, go, 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 go. Behind the front, PC, behind the front.
What does it take to build a major police force from the ground up?
We do things that I've never done in my career.
That is our culture. It was an extra challenge when the municipal government changed.
I know the RCMP have been here for a long, long time.
I knew resistance would be very high, and I knew that it was going to be a very uphill battle.
It'll be poignant for us, bittersweet in some ways, to turn the reins over to the Surrey Police Service.
Surrey has long been the largest city in the country under local RCMP jurisdiction. But in the years leading up to the 2018 municipal election, mounting concerns of crime and public safety.
Surrey's 31st shooting of the year.
Shots fired, gang war.
Kind of tired of all the shootings in Surrey. I'm tired of guns. I'm tired of the syringes all over the streets.
Gang violence and the deadly drug crisis put city policing at the top of the ballot box.
We want our city safe again.
Mayoral candidate Doug McCallum pledged to replace the RCMP with a municipal police force, and he won.
You will be seeing your own Surrey Police Force.
At the first council meeting, a successful vote to terminate the city's contract with the RCMP set this colossal change in motion.
Policing is apolitical.
Meet Norm Lipinski, a guy we quickly learned runs on a tight schedule. He's also the Surrey Police Service's top cop, a job he landed in 2020.
We marked the beginning of Surrey's police transition.
What was it that drew you to SPS and kind of the challenge taking on this role?
That's it exactly. It is the challenge of taking on the role. I like to build things, I like to build teams, and here we are. It's a brand new organization. It's an ability to put my fingerprint on it.
And you could call this one of those fingerprints. This is where we first met Norm, leading a batch of fresh recruits for a ceremonial run with the chief, a tradition he picked up during his days in Edmonton.
In our recruit training there, we always ran with senior management.
We are the PD. We are the PD. The mighty, mighty PD. Mighty, mighty PD. SPS. SPS.
We always line up in twos because in policing, you always have a partner. You got to depend on a partner. And then there's the cadence songs that we do, and that provides some sense of unity, that provides some sense of team.
These future officers headed next to BC's Justice Institute for 6 months of training, but not without some parting wisdom.
You have to have that place inside yourself where you can go to when the things get rough, and you pull that out, and you power through.
This cohort, part of a massive pipeline of officers needed to fill the force. The Surrey Police Service needs to hire 785 officers. It's about halfway there with 446 hired to date. The bulk of its recruits are experienced officers.
I was initially brought on by the Vancouver Police in 1998.
I've worked for the RCMP as well as municipal policing.
I joined the RCMP back in 2002, and my first posting was in fact
Surrey, British Columbia.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance.
First, officers are sworn in.
Switching organizations is a tough choice. I thank you for joining the SPS. And you're going to be part of history coming up November 29th.
Then 6 weeks of orientation and intense tactical training. The bulk of it takes place in a municipal warehouse turned training facility large enough to handle the hundreds of officers that still need to be hired.
You can teach an old dog new tricks.
Among the latest cohort of SPS trainees is a familiar face, Lindsay Houghton, a former media officer for the VPD.
Officers will be linking up with investigators.
I'm not a young dog anymore, but it's fantastic training. They push you to the limits.
He'll be tackling the same role for the SPS, but not without sweating through intense training first. There's one-on-one gunfights. Simulations of officers attacked while in their vehicles. Walls are put up to mimic calls into tight buildings. And then there's actors.
They have a scener for a day.
Sam Grantham, a former officer in Port Moody, called to a jumper on a bridge.
It's not going to get any better. I don't want you to quit. Will you come with me? Just come off the bridge.
Grantham is joining the SPS mental health team.
Did you pick up any triggers?
The parents?
Yeah.
She spent years in a similar unit in Port Moody.
That's where my heart is, helping people in crisis. People don't call the police when they're having a good day. They call us when they need help. So it was a great opportunity to get back into working specifically with people that are in crisis.
Are we following you? Dylan Emery is a Surrey RCMP convert recruited by the SPS.
I had friends in the Surrey Police Service who'd moved over from various agencies. I'd been watching sort of the climate over there and the excitement level building. I think they reached out to me. It did come a little faster than I had expected, so there were a lot of quick decisions being made.
It's smooth sailing for officers coming in now, but there were no shortage of ups and downs for those who were hired 3 years ago. Tomorrow, more on the political turmoil that threatened the SPS and the toll it took on officers. John Hernandez, CBC News, Surrey.
It was a very snowy weekend in northern BC, and Environment Canada has issued several freezing rain and snowfall warnings for the big region. It says the North and South Peace River, Bulkley Valley, Fort Nelson, Lakes District, and Stewart and Chaco regions may see freezing rain, causing slippery roads, highways, and walkways. Snowfall warnings are also in effect for the Cassiar Mountains, Teslin, and Watson Lake areas. They're expected to get between 15 and 35 centimeters of snow by Monday night. And Karis Hogg is here with the latest on that snow and cold and potential freezing rain action.
Yes, well, very messy conditions over the central and northern parts of the province. A series of frontal systems is bringing heavy rain, heavy snow, freezing rain in some areas, along with anywhere from, strong to extreme winds for the northwestern ranges, northern Rockies, along with the Caribou ranges too. I'll have more details on that later in the show. A quick look at Metro Vancouver for tonight into tomorrow, a heavy fog advisory, so be aware right now, overnight and into tomorrow morning, very dense fog. So be aware of that if you're on the roads.
And we'll be hearing it on the horn in the harbor. Thanks very much, Karis. One of the biggest bands in rock and roll history, AC/DC, is coming to Vancouver next year. The Rockers are launching a North American tour after almost a decade. They'll shake up BC Place on April 22nd next year with their 2020 album Power Up and some of their iconic tracks. Vancouver is the only Canadian date the band is playing so far on its 13-show tour. Tickets will go on sale this Friday at noon. And still with music, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour lands in Vancouver this Friday. Fans gearing up for the really big shows. After the break, how to celebrate in the days leading up to the concerts and more on Swiftie fandom. Stick around. In just a few days, tens of thousands of Swifties will make their way to BC Place for the final Eras Tour shows. Michelle Morton has more on the preparations underway in this city.
The Eras Tour arrives in Vancouver on Friday. Are you ready for it? Taylor Swift signs have been popping up throughout the city, and in English Bay, the laughing statues are also rocking friendship bracelets.
So we have Lover, which is your favorite.
Riley Ressler says she made the bracelets in collaboration with the West End BIA and used repurposed materials from another project.
A very common thing at the concerts that the community started doing is they trade mini friendship bracelets before the concert begins. So we took that idea and used some of Taylor Swift's song lyrics and some words that describe the West End and Vancouver and used that to go across as sashes.
Jumping on board the Era's excitement is also TransLink, which revealed Taylor Swift-themed transit maps.
We want it to be a really fun experience for people as soon as they step on transit.
Love Green says TransLink will also be providing extra service for the nights of the concert Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That includes extending hours for SkyTrain and SeaBus and deploying extra buses. She also says there will be a special West Coast Express train running Saturday only to connect commuters from Metro Vancouver to the Fraser Valley.
Overall, we expect larger crowds. We expect a lot of people to come downtown, whether it's for the concerts or for the other events that are happening in that Stadium District area. And so we have added extra security, extra transit volunteers, SkyTrain attendants, transit police, and transit supervisors to really help direct customers and manage crowds.
A Swiftie herself, Ressler says she was lucky enough to get her hands on tickets a couple of days ago after winning some at a charity auction.
I am so excited to see the whole city get activated, and I think it's just she's created such a massive safe community and people feel that warm welcome.
Meanwhile, the Better Business Bureau in BC is warning fans hoping to get tickets to beware of scams, recommending Swifties buy tickets from trusted vendors and double-checking with sellers about the ticket's authenticity. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC-based crypto trading platform is being ordered to pay almost $20 million in fines. The BC Securities Commission says it's found the company, EasyBTC, committed fraud. Our Jason Proctor has more on what happened. Jason, that's a lot of money. What happened here?
Yeah, so basically this decision was aimed at this platform, EasyBTC, and its founder and kind of the operating mind, this guy named David Smiley. And essentially it was a crypto exchange. So people brought their cash and their various cryptocurrencies to the exchange. And he sort of promised that it would be safe there and what he called cold storage. So the way that the regulator explains this is sort of the movement of this away from the internet where it's safe from hacking. So as an investor, you think, okay, I'm going to make my trades, etc. I can watch my kind of money and my investments go up and it'll all be safe. Problem is that people started asking for their money back. They started, worrying about this. And found out that a large amount of the Bitcoin and Ether, another form of cryptocurrency there, was moving away from the cold storage and off to gaming websites, gambling cryptocurrency gaming websites, and also personal accounts. And so, the regulator got involved. They looked at it. They found that the total damage, the amount gone, as of July 2019, which is kind of the midpoint for all of this, was about $13 million. And so that's all been kind of calculated, to now in this fine. That's $10.8 million of sort of actual, money ordered back, and then an $8 million fine as well that he has to pay.
It is a lot of money. What has been the impact on the customers?
Well, it's huge because I say it's $13 million in July 2019, less, when this whole kind of, exchange opened. As of today, that's around $100 million. So one of the customers, for instance, said this contributed to the stresses, the knowledge that it's not just what they lost, but the loss of what they could have had. And they've seen nothing back.
All right. Jason Proctor, we appreciate your time, and we can read more on Jason's story on our website, cbc.ca/BC. A look at the day that was in Port Alberni, a grey and overcast day at the end of the inlet. But some sun is on the way. Karis Hogg has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up. Well, as we've been telling you, Taylor Swift is coming to Vancouver in the final stop on her massively successful Eras tour. Her penultimate stop was in Toronto, where our CBC colleagues found out just what Swift means to fans.
Taylor's just been part of my life for so long. She's been part of my life since 2006, so 18 years of traveling, getting to see her all over, and building friendships from all around the world thanks to Taylor.
I've been a Swiftie my whole life. Like, I got my her first album for my 12th birthday. I've raised my own daughter on her music. To be here is just, it feels like home.
She means everything to me ever since I was super little. It's just been awesome.
Now, we've done stories of people paying a lot of money to go to Swift's concert, even flying around the world to attend. But what makes people such die-hard fans of celebrities, particularly Swifties? Joining us is clinical psychologist Dr. Lynn Zubarnis, who's written extensively on the psychology of being a fan. Doctor, thanks for being here. First of all, what leads people to form such strong connections with celebrities like Taylor Swift?
Well, what's happening is what we call a parasocial relationship, which is actually an instinctive thing that people form. It's an attachment relationship. So when we are around familiar faces, we instinctively develop an attachment to them. A parasocial relationship is a form of attachment relationship that isn't reciprocal, because we might know a lot about the celebrity and they might not know very much about us, but it's just as satisfying as our other attachment relationships. And it makes us feel good being in the presence of that celebrity, whether it's in person or virtually.
Sorry, did you say some people or generally people find it just as satisfying as other relationships, like friends they see regularly?
It does feel very much the same. Fans are certainly aware that it is not a two-way relationship, but because it's an attachment relationship, it does feel good to have proximity or to be acknowledged by that person, whether it's seeing them in concert, like on the Eras tour, or whether it's being acknowledged or interacting on social media.
Now, we've heard some, perhaps the benefits there. Are there harms to having these parasocial relationships or being in communities like this?
There can be harm to anything if it goes too far. So if you are so invested in that parasocial relationship that you're neglecting your in-person relationships, or you're spending so much on going to concerts that you're not able to pay your mortgage, then we are in the detriment category. But on the flip side, there's a lot of benefits to being a fan. It really brings a sense of belongingness, being part of that fandom community, and that reduces things like loneliness and depression. So that's good for people.
And we've heard particularly the focus that fans have talked about with the Taylor Swift concert being positive for younger people, women, LGBTQ, etc. Are there behaviors playing out at these concerts? Thousands of people with the same interest get together. I mean, certainly, if you've been to a concert and there's a sing-along, it's a good feeling.
It's a really good feeling, yes. Maybe it's particularly amplified when there's music involved. There's a thing called emotional contagion that people experience when they are in a group sort of enjoying or doing the same thing. And it really developed in an evolutionary sense to make people pick up quickly on other people's emotions so we could run away if something dangerous was coming. But it works the same way for joy. So when people are in a big group, like at a concert, that feeling of joy is contagious amongst the fans, and it's amplified. Everybody gets in sync with that feeling of joy. They call it collective effervescence, and that feels really wonderful. Anybody who's ever been in a concert has probably experienced that powerful feeling.
And lastly, we appreciate your time. How would you differentiate between perhaps Swifties at a concert and maybe sports fans at a game?
You know, there's not really much difference. Fandom is fandom. When I first started studying it, I met with one of the premier sports fandom researchers, and at the end of our hour-long conversation, we said, oh, things are pretty much the same. For both of them, there's a lot of vicarious achievement when the celebrity or the team is successful. We call it basking in the reflected glory. That happens when your team wins the Super Bowl, but it's also going to happen tonight at the Eras Tour because Taylor has been so successful.
Dr. Lynn Zubarnis, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Another effect of the Canada Post workers' strike to tell you about. Elections Canada says it will not be sending out voter information cards to those eligible to vote in the upcoming federal by-election in Cloverdale-Langley City. The job action is now into its third week. Andrew Chang breaks down why the two sides are so far apart.
When Canada Post workers go on strike, the vast majority of letter mail just doesn't get delivered. Then think about packages. Canada Post figures with 55,000 workers on strike since mid-November.
What do we want? When do we want it? Now!
It's missed out on an estimated 10 million package deliveries. And Canada Post needs your business because it just announced a third quarter loss of
more than $300 million.
$315 million.
$315 million.
And the negotiator tasked with bringing the two sides together to find a resolution to this contract dispute.
Mediated talks between Canada Post and the union representing its workers have been suspended.
Yeah, they gave up. The two sides apparently weren't even on the same planet. And this is after days of direct mediated talks.
I'm extremely frustrated with this turn of events. These negotiations have not budged. Have not budged in over 8 days under a special mediator.
So why is this negotiation proving so difficult? And how might it end? So how far apart is far apart? About 12.5%. Canada Post has proposed an 11.5% wage increase spread out over 4 years, whereas the union has asked for 24% over that same time period.
Unions are doing this everywhere. Inflation's been devastating for our members. They can't pay their groceries or their rent.
Postal workers have fallen far behind, as many people within the society have fallen behind. We've seen inflation go through the roof.
So let's look at inflation. If the goal of a pay increase is to beat inflation, and we peg it at its ideal target, 2% per year, that's 8% over 4 years, Canada Post's offer beats that. But when has inflation ever been at 2%, right? Well, last month it was exactly at 2%. And the month before it was actually lower at 1.6%. But take the whole year into account, and inflation so far in 2024 is 2.5%. Last year, 3.9%. The year before, 6.8%. And it was 3.4% the year before that. Altogether, that's a 16.6% increase in the cost of living over 4 years. In that sense, 11.5% doesn't seem to cut it, does it?
Solidarity! With our members off for a week, we've already lost 2% of our annual wages. Any wage increase will not make up for that 2%, but we're fighting for the survival of good jobs for Canadians.
And 11.5% is on the low side of what public and private sector unions in general have negotiated the last few years. The federal government actually keeps track of major labor negotiations. And if we zero in on the transportation industry, which includes Canada Post, we can see the average annual wage settlement this year and the last reached as high as 4.2% per year. That equals, on average, a 16.8% wage increase over 4 years. And if you look at other prominent negotiations this year, there's certainly room to negotiate up. Take dock workers in Montreal, who are also federally regulated.
The Maritime Employers Association tabled what it called its final comprehensive offer on Thursday and locked out nearly 1,200 workers after they rejected it.
They were offered 12% over 4 years and rejected it, demanding instead 20% to match offers made to their counterparts in Halifax and Vancouver. It's not clear Montreal dock workers will get what they're asking for, but when it comes to Canada Post's side of the story, they have a very simple response to their union's wage demand. We're already broke. Canada Post has been hemorrhaging money for years. And I know this because I've gone through their annual financial statements. They're down $748 million last year alone. The year before that, $548 million. Minus $490 million, minus $779, minus $153, minus $276. Over the last 6 years, Canada Post has lost almost $3 billion. And unlike other Crown corporations, this is a company that has to turn a profit because it doesn't get government money. Here's the state of their business in their own words. Letter mail volumes have eroded significantly. There has been a major decline in our cash position. Canada Post's financial situation is unsustainable. Its long-standing role is under significant threat, and we expect to fall below our required operating and reserve cash requirements by early 2025. That last one means they'll be out of money by early next year.
This is when Canada Post makes most of its money. So the rest of the year, if it's losing money, it's making money in these few weeks between kind of Black Friday and Christmas and New Year's.
And mail delivery is labor intensive. You need people making those rounds. And we can see in Canada Post's latest annual report, salaries and benefits make up the majority of all of their operating costs, almost $4.9 billion in 2023. That's almost 63% of their budget.
Essentially, the company has said it can't afford what the union is asking for.
And this brings us to Canada Post's other big problem, that over the last few years, they've lost the most lucrative part of their business.
The explosion of e-commerce that occurred during the pandemic caused the e-commerce companies to re-examine their cost of distribution. And they found it was too high from both Canada Post and the traditional couriers. So they sought alternatives, and the gig industry of delivery came into being at radically lower costs.
Pre-pandemic, Canada Post controlled 62% of the package delivery business in Canada. But smaller, nimbler companies swept in with an employee business model that was the opposite of Canada Post's. Low overhead, low cost, few benefits.
Financially, things are very challenging. The reality is things have moved so quickly in the last 2 years that the platform we've built in terms of increasing our volumes and parcels due to e-commerce has been chipped away by the competition.
And in Canada Post's own annual report, we are the only major carrier that does not offer regular 6-day-a-week delivery in major urban centers. Some competitors offer 7-day-a-week delivery nationally.
We didn't expect our market share to drop that quickly and for the competitors to take that much of the volume.
Parcels are the single most important way Canada Post makes money, about half of its total business. But every piece of this pie, parcels, letter mail, junk mail, they've all gotten smaller. The company wants to change that by expanding package deliveries into the weekend. But the union disagrees on exactly how to do that. And some experts think this might actually be the more important issue than wages.
The company says in order to even survive, it needs to be able to deliver 7 days a week.
Canada Post has a collective agreement that says you get double time on the weekend, which makes them even more uncompetitive. So what they're, to get around the problem, is they're saying we want to hire a whole bunch of part-time people at a much lower salary who will work on the weekend without time and a half.
Meanwhile, the union is saying they're really concerned that it might kind of cut into full-time jobs. They think that full-time employees should be able to take those weekend shifts.
The makeup of Canada Post workforce is something that both sides have fought fiercely over. According to the corporation, 95% of mail delivery teams right now are full-time. And the union doesn't want to see that number erode because even Canada Post itself admits to make weekend delivery a reality, it would need to rely on part-time workers who earn less money, have less benefits, and who may ultimately have fewer protections.
They want to create a part-time, low-wage, gigified workplace at a Crown corporation, and CUPW knows that that's not the best way for us to go. We do have the ability to do this work with full-time workers, and they already have the ability to do weekend delivery right now.
Unions are loath in everywhere to give up hard-won, fought rights and benefits at the negotiating table achieved in the past. It's this idea you don't go backward, you go forward. Canada Post is arguing, in essence, if we don't become competitive in parcels, it's going to be the death of Canada Post.
Meanwhile, every day that the strike goes on, Canada Post's financial position gets worse and worse.
We could post a record loss this year. The fourth quarter is where we make our money. It's our busiest time of year. Nothing coming in, no revenue, no parcels. Those parcels are going elsewhere and having a huge impact on Canada Post. as well as the rest of the country, as small businesses and charities try and scramble and find alternatives.
Now, wages and weekends are just two issues on the table, and this story keeps moving. As I record this, the latest turn, Canada Post has begun laying off striking workers, which they say is in line with the Canada Labour Code. The union says it's a scare tactic. But what's abundantly clear here is that the two sides appear unwilling or unable to meet in the middle. And a freeze in talks could not have come at a worse time for Canada Post or the people who rely on it during the holidays.
Dozens of people are dead in Syria amid escalating violence. After the break, more on the surprise rebel attack and how Syrian government forces have responded. That's next. There is growing anger tonight in Georgia, where thousands of demonstrators are demanding the government reverse a decision to pause talks on joining the European Union. Protesters fear it's another signal the former Soviet state is tilting back toward Russia. Briar Stewart has more on the violent clashes and Canada's response.
Thousands gathered in front of Georgia's parliament for a fifth straight night. Some launched firecrackers. In response, riot police fired water cannons and tear gas. Protesters say they won't let up.
Unless we get whatever we want, and that's the parts to be part of the EU.
More than 150 have been arrested since protests ignited last week after Georgia's prime minister said the country was suspending talks to join the EU until 2028. The leader of the long-time ruling Georgian Dream Party also said there would be no negotiations with the opposition, which believes the election in October was rigged. Georgia's president is the country's ceremonial head of state, but she's now in a standoff with the government.
It's twice as outrageous when a government that is not considered legitimate by its population takes a 180% turn towards Russia.
The Kremlin calls what's happening in Georgia akin to a revolution, the kind that led Ukraine into, quote, a dark abyss.
And I think the pressure now has intensified.
Natalie Sebanadze is Georgia's former ambassador to the EU.
It is also part and parcel of the global geopolitical confrontation between Russia and the West. And what is happening in Georgia is Russia's gain.
The Baltic countries announced that they are sanctioning senior Georgian officials for what they say is a police crackdown on protesters. And Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, who was in Riga Monday, said Ottawa will soon follow suit.
And we are very concerned about what Russia is trying to do.
Moscow claims it isn't meddling in Georgia, but the crowd is convinced Russia already has, and they vow to keep pushing back. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Dozens of people have been killed in the escalating violence in Syria. It started last Friday when rebels launched a surprise attack and took control of Syria's largest city, Aleppo. As Margaret Evans explains, Syrian government forces have now launched a counterattack.
The flames threatening to engulf Syria and beyond, reignited by seemingly dormant rebel groups emerging to seize Aleppo from government forces. This was Syria's response, airstrikes in Aleppo and in Idlib province, home to a myriad of opposition groups backed by Turkey. Their capture of Aleppo, led by a former al-Qaeda affiliate, was carried out with breathtaking speed.
Not only me, everybody was surprised, including the regime in Syria.
Turkey, though, insists this Middle East analyst and former Lebanese general must have known.
They cannot move out of the borders of Idlib without green light of Turkey. So Turkey was not at all surprised.
Turkey's foreign minister met his Iranian counterpart Monday, saying Damascus must reconcile with its people and what he called the legitimate opposition. Syria insists it will put the insurgents down. This is the head of the armed forces out meeting soldiers in villages reportedly recaptured from the rebels. This is our land and our pride, he said. And in Syria's northeast, there were huge demonstrations in Rojava, the de facto autonomous region run by the Kurds, who accuse the rebel opposition groups of now also attacking Kurdish fighters near Aleppo. Countries including France, Germany, Britain, and the United States are calling for de-escalation. But there are fears that Syria's long-simmering civil war is just heating up again. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Beirut.
Kara Saug is here with our BC-wide weather forecast and some very wintry weather for north of here.
Yes, that's right. North and central BC over the weekend really had a wintry time. You can see here on the satellite and radar the past 6 hours, some snow in central BC, but really the story over the weekend was more than 200 millimeters of rain fell on parts of the central coast, and also Stewart, BC, which is a community that's just a little north of Prince Rupert on the Alaska border, got 73 centimeters of snow. And there's just a series of frontal systems bringing more heavy snow, rain, freezing rain in some parts. And so we do have some watches to tell you about, some weather watches. So here on the north coast, Prince Rupert area, heavy rain and high winds expected through Wednesday morning. Winds 80 kilometers an hour, gusting to 100 kilometers in exposed coastal sections. And then up here, this little turquoise bit here is a snowfall warning for right the northern border of BC, right across, like Yukon, BC border, right straddling that. A snowfall warning up to 50 centimeters of snow expected in that area by Wednesday morning. Some temperatures cool in the northeast with wind chill. Fort St. John, a high of 0 tomorrow, but with wind chill, that'll be more like minus 23. And in Fort Nelson, even further north, a wind chill of minus 32. So risk of frostbite tomorrow, which is pretty intense. Also a little cooler in the Kootenays tomorrow as well. Taking a look at the south coast, pretty dry day over the past 6 hours, not a lot of precipitation. And looking forward to the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver, a fog advisory is in effect right now. Overnight and into tomorrow morning, be aware, very limited visibility on the roads. So heads up if you're traveling anytime between right now and tomorrow morning.
Very good advice. Karis, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Up next, Orca's bringing 80s ocean fashion back, donning salmon hats. Yeah, you heard that right. More on this revived trend and what it means for the whales right after this. Let's spread some joy. Kick off the holiday season with a day of special programming in support of local food banks across BC. Make the season kind. December 6th. A resident orca off the coast of Washington state was recently spotted sporting a dead salmon on its head.
This phenomenon was first documented in 1987 when whales from 3 separate pods were seen wearing salmon like hats.
I'm bringing it back. I'm wearing a fish hat. It's tipped to the side and I kept the tags.
The orcas are throwing fish on their heads and carrying them around. And that's an unusual behavior for sure. I don't think we have any idea why this is happening exactly, but it is some kind of communication. This is something that is, I would say, kind of frivolous, kind of playful, and just a symbol of maybe that there were plenty of fish at that time. And that is the case, that there has been a huge chum salmon run in the Puget Sound. In the late 1980s, 1987 or 1988, there was a similar fad of wearing a fish on the head of orcas. And it was recorded. It was a little more sustained then, I believe, that there were more instances. At least 3 whales participated in the fad at that time. So it's precedented. There's a history of it, but we still cannot really pin down exactly what it means. But it means something to them. That's what's important. Is it is some sort of symbol that carries some meaning that they are communicating. It's always a thrill, and it's a kind of exhilaration to see orcas in the wild in any case. But to see one wearing a fish, you could say that's a cherry on top of that experience.
Where did they discover shoulder pads?
Fish shoulder pads?
Can you imagine? Oh dear, that's gonna smell.
I want them. Thank you for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Jam, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. See you then.